Good afternoon, everybody. We're starting the Fireside chat with Congressman Tom Emmer, who's representing Minnesota's 6th District. Mr. Emmer is a hockey player, or he's still a hockey player, still plays hockey. Played college hockey at University of Alaska Fairbanks. He has a BA in political science and a JD from William Mitchell College of Law. 7 children, 6 boys and 1 girl, and he's been coaching hockey for like 20 plus years. And he's a member of the House Financial Services Committee. So like a quick round of applause for Mr. Emmer, Congressman Emmer.
That's the best thing I've had in a couple weeks. That was nice.
All right, second round of applause for Congressman.
Okay, great. No, we wore that out quick.
All right. And then we have the nice fireside chat to make everyone feel warm, especially after the last breakout was pretty chilly in some of those rooms. So just to get to know you a little better.
Okay.
So how do you, what do you think about when you think about innovation in the communities you represent?
In terms of the financial services sector or beyond? Because innovation is what Minnesota is all about. Innovation is trying to find new ways or improve old ways to do things, no matter what the industry is. I think Minnesota has always been a leader. We are still home in Minnesota to 17 or 18 Fortune 500 companies. It's all about innovation.
How do you, as a policymaker, ensure that your constituents can continue to innovate, that there's not unduly burdensome federal regulations?
Well, but that's the issue.
Right.
Right? It's, is there a place for government? Absolutely there is. But when government becomes too large, too intrusive, it acts as a wet blanket on innovation. People starting new ideas, creating new things. And I think, what do I think about today? I think we're in that place. I think the goal for Republicans and Democrats alike, we essentially want the same things. We just have different ways of getting there. And if you can strip back the political rhetoric of the day, I think you'd find the vast majority of Republicans and Democrats, again, if they're not focused on their next election or making a statement that's going to be used against them in a primary, I think you would find that both would tell you that we have kind of crossed the great divide when it comes to that excessive regulation piece. Not all regulation is bad, but when it's excessive, duplicative, redundant, you pick your word, it can really stifle innovation.
So based on that and being on the Financial Services Committee, how do you try to reach consensus with like Congressman Meeks, and how do you try to ensure that there has to be smart regulation so that there can be responsible innovation?
Well, it's interesting. You bring up Greg Meeks. I don't know him well. I've tried to get to know him little by little, walking past him in the hallway, listening to him, seeing him on the House floor, seeing him in committee. I guess I know of his reputation third hand because Greg, as I understand it, it's not about being a Democrat or being a Republican, even though he's got a definite political perspective and something he's trying to accomplish. It's really about building relationships and getting to know people that you work with, which that's what I'm about. So when you talk about how do you build consensus, and the Financial Services Committee in the House is interesting because the tone is usually set by more senior people. And I think sometimes the tone is not conducive to building consensus. I think Washington has slipped into, and quite frankly, I think this has happened across the country. Somewhere, someone decided that politics is a zero-sum game. And the young people that come to Washington, D.C. that I've met, they are working in these offices, and they've come to believe that in order for their member to win, somebody else has to lose, and that is a crime. Mm-hmm. So what do I try to do? I try to get to know colleagues, both Republican, Democrat. I try to get to know staff people. find out where they're coming from, what they're about, and then work with them directly, as opposed to having somebody tell me that we don't do that on this side of the aisle. I'll be my own person when it comes to that. And then within the office, the culture in my office is we aren't going to play those. So if you think it's a zero-sum game, then you're going to want to work for somebody else.
For your staff, that's
Yeah,
always the
absolutely.
culture. And how do you think a organization like OLPI can kind of foster that dialogue between you and the party across the aisle?
Well, I mean, you got to work with what you got to work with, and I'm going to risk getting in trouble, but
I said you would get in trouble. So
I know,
that's good.
but somebody once said you can't fix stupid, right? So I say that because the members, what you can do is be the resource. What you can do is provide the information, educate, and just be that communication piece, not just as an organization, but with the individual members, right? Because we try to. I was talking to Chris Maniville, my legislative director, who's here with me today. What we try to do is not just send out blast emails to a universe of financial service industry folks. What we try to do is have a dialogue, right? So we want to hear from you, but I think the other piece really is those of us that are in this job. I mean, it shouldn't be easy. We need to work a lot harder at building relationships with people across the aisle, and in our own team. You really have to get to know people. It's life, right?
Right.
Whether it's your professional life, your personal life, life is all about relationships if you're ever going to get something done. So that's our job, and then I think working with you and your membership, it's more about getting the information that you have so we know how we can be most valuable to what you're trying to accomplish.
For your constituents, how do they get a hold of you to let you know if there's pending legislation they don't agree with, or that they want you to consider a particular problem that's at the local level?
A lot of them have my cell phone number. It's a true story. I've been around a little over a decade in Minnesota politics, and I've had other races, but at home, it's pretty personal. Minnesota is a little bit different than New York and some other places where I think people have the same relationship, but it's so big and it moves so fast. We've had time to build some of these relationships across not just our district, but the whole state. So a lot of people have the phone number. The other way is I try to be everywhere, right? We're invited to do something. Again, I don't think people who get elected, who are in elected office, are supposed to just sit in the office. We work for the people we represent. We work for our states. We work for the American public. So if you offer, hey, Tom, would you ever consider Quicken Loans as having a fireside chat? Would you ever? Yeah, sure. Be happy to, because I think this is where you can get that dialogue as well.
I appreciate that. I saw on your site too, you do a web videos, Ask Tom. So
Yeah.
Anyone can just hashtag Ask Tom to ask you questions about their district.
I get a hard time because my hunting dog for 13 years, Buzz Lightyear, is a German wire-haired pointer that we lost about a year ago. My wife used to tease me every Christmas by dressing him in a coat and tie, and he's in the back of almost every one of those Ask Tom videos. So if you're wondering, that is not a family member.
You've worked in your state legislature, and now you're on the federal level. How can you? We talked about reaching across the aisle. How can you reach the state legislatures to kind of work in concert with some of the regulations? Like some issues are a state level and some are a federal issue. Like, how do you work with your state legislator?
Well, again, I have kind of a unique relationship because, I mean, when I served, I was one of the leadership folks, and then I was a candidate for a different office that really solidified these relationships to the point where I talk regularly with the Minnesota Speaker of the House, with the Majority Leader in the Senate. Frankly, I talk to him at least once a week, if not more, it seems like. And then the governor The governor and I actually have some history because we ran against each other, but we get along. I mean, I think his ideas are bad. No, I mean, he's a hockey player. His problem was he was a goalie, so
A lot of pucks to the head.
yeah, no, but we have a good working relationship, and I would say, because it's a great question if you think about this. I don't know how many of the folks here work with both federal and state, but as you do your thing, as you try to educate, I think it's really important that you have public or government relations, federal people that are communicating with your government relations people at the state level, and that they don't get siloed. I mean, somebody asked me a while ago, how would you do this if you got all these issues, especially on the financial services side? Well, if it were me, I hope you're sitting down and you're saying, all right, these are the issues that are most important to us and our membership. These are the ones that are most urgent. These are the ones that could, you set your priorities, right? And then you take your government relations teams, state and federal, and you have them coordinate the messages that they're taking out there. But it's even more complicated for you because then you got to look at, you only have one federal government, right? Now, granted, you got 535 different personalities in different offices, but now you look at all the states, and no one state, in my opinion, is exactly like another. So you really have to have a coordinated message, and then working at the state level, you have to understand how that state operates, how that legislature operates, to make sure that you're getting that message delivered so that it's going to stick.
Very good advice. So we have some time for questions from the audience. Hopefully we have the catch boxes somewhere.
Anything's fair game. I don't watch football.
So if there's any questions, we'd appreciate it. Anything's fair game. And Margaret's going to throw the catch box. So if you don't raise your hand, she's just going to throw it at you.
I'll just pick you and throw it at you. So.
Must be that post-lunch stupid.
Everyone's a little tired. I did have another question. You were an advocate of the Financial Choice Act.
Yeah, absolutely.
How do you see that act encouraging innovation, and where do you see the future of like a similar act?
The first, it's about lightening the load, lightening the regulation burden that is really is stifling innovation, especially from the bottom. You look at the financial, I look at the financial services food chain, as I call it, and you need everybody that's in the food chain. You need the biggest banks for doing business around the globe, et cetera, and other services. But you also need the smallest and everybody in between. And the Choice Act, to me, which is probably why it was opposed by the biggest banks, they weren't fans of this. It starts to lighten that load on the lower end so that they can get out from underneath all this excessive regulation and compliance costs that have happened. And I'm sure that your membership is aware of this, but in 2008, at the time of the last financial crash, you had roughly 8,000 community banks and roughly 8,000 credit unions in this country. A year after the crash, you still had roughly the same amount. It's now 7 years since Dodd-Frank was passed, and we are down to roughly 6,000 of each, and we're losing one every day. So that was the primary focus. There are some other really important pieces. It turns the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau into a law enforcement agency. We need to get back to making sure that the prudential regulators are allowed to do the job that they were supposed to do, instead of layering on top these other well-intentioned, I think, but abusive bureaucracies that don't allow or afford Americans due process when they're trying to respond and figure out what they did wrong, and don't have consistency in terms of your ability to understand the rules. Those are just two minor ones. But I would tell you the biggest thing for me, which I think is addressed a little bit in there, biggest thing to me going forward is to make sure that we unleash the ability of our financial services providers in whatever capacity or business arrangement to start forming capital again the way we need to at the lowest level. So the people with those ideas, right? The next, in my state, Medtronic was started in a garage. Harley Davidson was started in a garage. Walt Disney was started in a garage. You just go through all of them, and they were started in a garage because why? The person with that idea went into a local bank or had a relationship to someone with capital and said, I got a great idea. I just need a little capital to get it started. And I think that's the big thing for me. It's touched on in here, but going forward. And then the bills, so we're going to break up. I was told right before we left for the week in the district last week, Chair Henserling told me that they're going to start breaking up the Choice Act and now passing pieces of it through, which hopefully will give us a better opportunity for success on the Senate side. Mm-hmm. As you can see, they need more focused things to work on so they can get them done. I say that with a smile.
Well, that is, I want to thank you for sitting with us, and I'm going to another round of applause for Congressman Emmer.
Thank you.